is that in a year like this with so many black swan moments, who could have imagined? I mean, we already were in a dumpster fire of a presidential election year and congressional elections before the passing of Justice Ginsburg. And this has made things even more, the word contentious certainly doesn't do it justice. And so there is, all three of us are inside the Beltway conventional wisdom Washington lobbyists. And so inside the Beltway conventional wisdom right now is that Democrats are going to have a very good year. Vice President Biden polling consistently 7-8 points ahead of President Trump, and far more vulnerable Republicans in the United States Senate than there are vulnerable Democrats. And so you have to look at the very real possibility that Democrats could sweep. While I don't believe that Joe Biden is Bernie Sanders, I also think that there are tremendous dangers associated with a Democratic sweep. It is all but certain. I think it's more likely, by the way, that there would be a nominee and confirmation hearings that will make the Kavanaugh hearings look like amateur hour, like they were calm, and that you would have a vote after the election. And currently, depending on what happens during that process, currently it looks as though McConnell will have the 51 votes that are necessary to confirm someone. That almost guarantees that Leader Schumer takes the nuclear option, removal of the legislative filibuster, so that the threshold for enactment of any major legislation would be 51 votes. And instead of 60 votes to move to final passage. This, as you noted, for us primarily concerns us on the number one issue impacting our member firms and our association, which is preservation of the employer-provided group health insurance marketplace, and what kind of erosion could we see there. While Vice President Biden defeated Bernie Sanders in large part because of overreach on Medicare for all, there are nonetheless many troubling aspects to what a public option would look like, especially the kind of robust public option that would be pegged to Medicare reimbursement rates. The reality that the Vice President is currently proposing vast expansion of the subsidies inside the exchanges, and to repeal the provisions that say that if you have affordable coverage elsewhere through your employer, you can't access the exchanges. All of this adds up to a lot of risk, and frankly, the reality that Medicare is going to be insolvent in 2024, not 2026 as was previously expected, and the fact that the Vice President wants to lower the Medicare eligibility age to 60 is going to make that even more compelling. That's going to be a crisis situation, and we've got to be fully prepared for everything that could come out of the woodwork. The last comment I will give on this is that we saw during the ACA, at a point when Republicans had completely checked themselves out of the process, there was a proposal that came out of nowhere from the White House, no hearings, no discussion, that was on the Senate floor, presented to the Senate, that would have created a broker compensation regulatory authority to govern all aspects of benefits compensation through the Department of Health and Human Services. We had to turn to Democratic friends, and we had several. And so you had 7 or 8 very moderate Democrats who came to our rescue and helped remove that provision. These are the kinds of things that can come out of the woodwork again. And honestly, those 7 or 8 Democrats, people like Blanche Lincoln, like Ben Nelson, especially from Nebraska, they're no longer in the Senate. They were either defeated by Republicans or they retired. And so the polarization is scary. We've got a lot of friends, though, and we cultivate relationships. And so we know that this is going to be all hands on deck, and that there will be enormous challenges associated with employer-sponsored insurance, and hopefully some opportunities to stabilize the marketplace. Not 100% that a Democratic sweep is A, inevitable, or B, all bad, because we've seen a lot of troubling things, frankly, out of the Trump administration on the health side, whether it's short-term duration plans, whether it's some aspects of the association health plans, this is not entirely a concern that that only Democrats could deliver us ruin on these issues, but we also have great concerns given the vast debt that we're in. The vulnerability of the employer exception from taxation for group health insurance benefits will be on the line as well. So it's going to be one way or the other. This is going to be a hell of a battle next year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Joel. I think the conversations I'm having with Democratic leadership right now really focus on, it's not whether or not there's going to be an ACA package. We all know that that's been one of their top priorities since they got the majority in the House in 2018. And they will point to the reason that they continue to win these elections is because of pre-existing conditions and strengthening the ACA. That they believe is their number one message. Now that was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. So now, assuming that assuming there's a sweep. If there's not a sweep, this could play out in many different ways. We could have a Biden administration and a Republican Senate. That would be a very different scenario. But under the context, let's just say that it is a sweep. There's a lot of factors to consider. One factor is, what is the sequence by which they are going to deal, how are they going to get all of their agenda done, and what's the order that's going to go in? That's going to have a major impact on how big the ACA package is going to be. I think pre-COVID, they would have said the number one issue that they're going to do on day one is an ACA package. Today, that's not the case. Day one is going to be a COVID package and an economic relief package. And you can see how that's quickly going to turn into an infrastructure package for the economic relief piece. And you can also see how that easily dovetails into global climate crisis legislation, green energy legislation. You think about the committees that have to consider this in the House, they all have to go through the Ways and Means Committee. That committee, there's only X amount of resources, X amount of people that are going to be dealing with this. That puts the ACA at the last on the list, an ACA stabilization package, which in and of itself is going to be huge. Now, on the one hand, the stabilization package is going to include a lot of provisions that have already been vetted, have already been considered. You think about lowering drug costs. You think about banning surprise medical bills. And then you think about all the provisions to shore up the ACA markets, advertising enrollment into the exchanges, risk corridor subsidies to encourage carriers to participate in the exchanges to increase competition. All of that will probably be in a package, probably also transparency measures that we saw come out of the Senate Health Committee last summer. Public option is going to be the last and most controversial piece of that package, but that will likely be considered after they've already taken a lot of hard votes on big spending on an infrastructure bill, possibly even tax reform. So there's going to be a lot of staff fatigue and a lot of voting fatigue from Democratic members that come from red districts and come from Trump districts, that the speaker and the politicos are very aware that if they want to maintain the majority, they can't continue to force these very difficult votes on those members. So I'm just pointing this out to say, I think you're 100% that we've got a big battle, but the politics are going to line themselves up so that I think the center of the party is probably going to prevail over the left. That said, the left is going to feel very, very emboldened to feel like they deserve payback for getting on board with Biden-Harris. That was their last choice when it comes to a presidential ticket. And we don't see them coming unglued. In fact, Bernie Sanders just gave a really raw speech about how everyone needs to turn out for moderate Joe. That's a big deal. But they're going to be looking for paybacks. And the public option and a massive, a robust package to shore up, public insurance policies is going to be one of their top priorities. So, and add to that, you got Leader Schumer, who, if he is the Senate Majority Leader, he's preparing himself to be primaried from the left in 2 years. AOC's in his backyard. There's a freshman, Mondaire Jones, coming in who has made it very clear he's looking for a statewide race right around the corner. So Schumer's going to be pressured from the left to do something big. That said, if he gets the majority, he's going to get the majority from senators like Mark Kelly in Arizona, like senators from Montana, senators from Colorado, senators from Maine, Iowa. The potential senators that would flip it are all going to be from moderate to red states. And it's hard to envision them voting for any public option, nonetheless a robust public option. We had Kirsten Sinema speak to our group in the spring, and she said very clear she doesn't support a public option. And she knows that Joe Manchin doesn't either. So she's like, don't worry about it. The votes aren't there. So even if he does get rid of the filibuster, where the pressure is going to be incredibly large to do so if they appoint the next justice before the next president's sworn in, it's still difficult to see how they get to 51 votes to do something that could end up costing them the majority in 2 years. But that's not to say that we don't have a big battle ahead of us, because we absolutely do.
Joel Coppard, while you were talking, this is what I was thinking. But all of like the 10 issues that you said Democrats were going to tackle when it became triple D, that's all I was thinking. Like, oh, okay, money is going to grow on trees. That's what's going to happen with this vaccine. You get cured from COVID and you get free money. But I do think going back to the Supreme Court justice, I mean, it's barely like you have a little over a month to have a Supreme Court nominee be nominated officially, meet all the senators, and do hearings all during a pandemic. I mean, that's just, could you imagine, whoever the nominee is, say it's Amy Coney Barrett, and then somehow she like tests positive for COVID, that stops it. I mean, I don't think what the president wants is going to happen just logistically. And then, I mean, I agree. Infrastructure, healthcare, you have to have tax reform to get money to pay for those things, because there's no other option, especially as we have record unemployment because of a pandemic. So it's just, I wish my crystal ball was working. I wish I knew how to read tarot cards. I wish I was a Romney gypsy so I could, read tea leaves, but
I came to this discussion thinking that I was really loaded for bear for anything that Joel Copperwood said, but I actually disagree with you more here, Blair, because Mitch McConnell's legacy is going to be on judicial appointments, and they left no appointment, no vacancies whatsoever. And furthermore, as Joel Copperwood likes to note, they incentivized older Republican judges with ambassadorships and the like, so that they could be replaced with young conservative Federalist Society approved judges. I believe that Mitch McConnell is going to get through a nominee this year. I just, we don't know what could blow up during this process. But I believe strenuously that he will find a way to get to 51.
I think that's fair. I do. You heard it here, folks. We disagreed.